and the Privacy Commissioner.
Those papers are published under the authority of the House. No select committee reports have been delivered for presentation and no bills have been introduced, so the House comes to questions for oral answer, and the first question stands in the name of Metiria Turei.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, tēnā koutou katoa e te whare. My question is to the Minister for Social Development and asks, when she said in her response to the 2010 Taskforce for Action on Sexual Violence that it was important to, quote, consider future funding options to ensure the sector has greater certainty, end quote, did she intend for that to mean funding may be cut?
The Honourable Paula Van.
Mr Speaker, no. What I meant was exactly what I said, and that was, and I quote, establish what sexual violence services the government is already purchasing, what the current and long-term demands are, and consider future funding options to ensure the sector has greater certainty around funding.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. If her intention was to retain adequate services, will she restore support to the 8 sexual violence services who have told us that they have lost funding, and if she will not restore that funding, why not?
The Honourable Paula Bennett.
Mr Speaker, I'd need to see details on it. My understanding is that for many of them they haven't as such lost funding, but the Community Response Fund is no longer operating, and many had not seen that as what it was, which is time limited, instead saw it as ongoing.
Supplementary. How can the Minister provide any certainty to the sector when her government has broken its promises made over the Taskforce report, including axing the Community Response Fund, the alternative trials process being canned, the specialist court victims advisors, only nearly half of whom have never been appointed, and the stocktake of government spending on sexual violence services which has never been publicly released?
The Honourable Paula.
Mr Speaker, I don't agree with all of the members' assertions. In fact, the Members' Party themselves got a copy of that stocktake when they asked for it, has been made available to Toa Nest as well, and that has gone to them, so it is there. Also, the Community Response Fund is always what it has been, so we have not misled anyone or services on that. It was a time-limited funding that we did extend further because we saw the need, but time-limited is exactly that.
How has the government met its promise to continue to provide effective services to support those affected by sexual violence when now Auckland's helpline may have to cut their 24-hour phone support service because they do not have enough funding to continue?
The Honourable Paula Bennett.
Mr Speaker, I'm aware that a number of agencies have been working with the Auckland Helpline, that actually we do see that service as important, but we are also in realities where times are tough and ongoing funding is difficult to find. They are needing to have a look at how they cut their cloth to match their funding, but I know that agencies combined have put more in this year to try and meet some of those shortfalls.
Supplementary. Thank you, Mr Speaker. How does the axing of millions of dollars on funding, including the Community Response Fund, provide greater certainty to the survivors of sexual abuse and the services when agencies in Whangarei, in Nelson and in Hawera are saying they may have to shut up shop because they do not have enough funding to continue?
The Honourable Paula.
Mr Speaker, the member keeps ascertaining that we are cutting the Community Response Fund. We're not. We in fact put some millions and millions of dollars more in at very difficult times, and certainly that should be acknowledged as us trying to actually come up with over and carry over that difficult times for funding initiatives.
Sumaroni.
To the Minister, given the police have recently confirmed that 2,235 family violence investigations have been undertaken in just the last 20 months, where at least one sexual assault offence occurred, why has she cut her ministry's funding of the Campaign for Action on Family Violence by 58% since 2009?
The Honourable Paula Bennett.
Mr Speaker, because we're far more interested in putting money into services. So, for example, we have increased We've increased money to family violence services by $4 million over the last 4 years, and that is not the time-limited funding. So there was $40 million going in 2008, there's now $44 million, and in fact we've had another increase in the last 12 months.
Supplementary.
Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. What does the Minister have to say to the survivors of sexual violence and their families in the Manawatu, whose crisis phone line was last year diverted to Hawera, and who now don't know if there is anywhere left for that crisis phone to be diverted to because of funding cuts to the Hawera service?
The Honourable Paula Bennett.
Mr Speaker, what I am aware of is that there's at least 9 different helplines across New Zealand that respond to sexual violence services, and I think they are important and they certainly have the respect of this government. What we do need to look at is what is the most efficient way to use them and to run them. For example, Child, Youth and Family don't run a 24/7 service in every region. We run it nationally, then can be extended out over and make sure that we see it regionally during the day. And I do think we need to look at those services that are running, how we can get them more efficient and actually meet the needs of people as they need them.
Can the Minister understand that after all the broken promises in relation to the Taskforce report and the funding cuts and losses, that the families of the survivors of sexual violence and the sector who support those families now have no certainty about the continuation of those services? And if so, will she commit to ensuring that these vital services remain open for those communities?
The Honourable Paula Bennett.
Mr Speaker, I don't agree with the member's assertions, and what I will say is yes, we are committed to continuing to work with them and talk with them and find solutions.
Question number 2, the Honourable Tauhenarei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. What contribution is the screen industry making